Don't drink that. The words cut through the boardroom just as Evelyn Hart lifted the crystal glass toward her lips. For 1 second, no one moved. Not the attorneys seated beneath the long strip of white ceiling light. Not the investors staring at the merger documents spread across the polished table. Not even Evelyn herself, the Millionaire CEO whose name was printed in silver letters on the glass wall behind her. Marcus Reed stood near the service entrance with both hands resting on the handle of his cleaning cart. His navy uniform was neat, but worn at the cuffs. A gray mop bucket sat beside him, its wheels still wet from the marble floor. He had not meant to speak. Men like Marcus learned early that powerful rooms had rules. You cleaned the fingerprints off the glass. You emptied the trash. You disappeared before anyone had to notice you were there. But he had seen the small white packet in Graham Cole's hand. He had seen it vanish beneath the edge of the conference table 10 minutes earlier, quick as a magician's trick. And now he could smell something faint beneath the sharp citrus scent of Evelyn's sparkling water. Something metallic. Bitter. Wrong. Evelyn's fingers stopped inches from her mouth. Her face had gone pale beneath the soft glow of the recessed lights. She looked at Marcus as if she were trying to place him. He had worked on the executive floor for nearly 8 months, mostly after dark, when the offices emptied and the city lights turned the windows into black mirrors. To Evelyn Hart, he was probably just another quiet man pushing a cart through the hallways. "Excuse me?" Graham asked. His voice was smooth, but the smile on his face did not reach his eyes. Marcus swallowed. His heart knocked once, hard, against his ribs. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice low, "I think you should use a sealed bottle instead." A nervous laugh traveled around the table, small and embarrassed. One of the investors leaned back in his leather chair. Another glanced toward security. Graham stepped forward, adjusting the cuff of his expensive blue suit. "Mr. Reed," he said, as though explaining something to a child, "this is a private meeting." Marcus looked at the glass again. Tiny bubbles climbed through the water. Nothing looked strange. That was the worst part. Evelyn lowered the glass slowly. Her hand trembled once before she set it down. "Why?" she asked. The room tightened around that single word. Marcus could have said he did not know. He could have apologized, pushed his cart back into the hallway, and gone home to his 8-year-old son with a paycheck still waiting on Friday. No one needed new sneakers. The old pair had a split near the toe, and Marcus had promised they would buy another pair after his next shift. But Marcus remembered another room, years ago, with hospital lights buzzing overhead and his wife whispering that something inside her did not feel right. People had told her she was tired, stressed, overreacting. By the time anyone listened, the silence had become permanent. He could not stand in another bright room and watch someone be ignored. "Because you've been getting sick after meetings," Marcus said. "And every time, it happens after you drink something that was already waiting for you." Evelyn stared at him. The color drained from Graham's face so quickly that Marcus almost missed it. Then Evelyn's breath caught. Her fingers curled around the edge of the table. The crystal glass slipped from her hand, struck the marble, and rolled in a slow circle across the floor. No one spoke. Outside the windows, rain pressed against the city skyline, turning the lights below into trembling streaks of gold. And Marcus understood, too late, that he had just stepped into a truth someone had worked very hard to keep buried. Marcus Reed did not wait to see whether anyone thanked him. The instant the glass stopped rolling, he reached for the blue emergency phone mounted beside the conference room door. His fingers hovered over it, then pulled back. Graham Cole was already moving, fast enough to look helpful, slow enough to look calm. "Ms. Hart needs air," Graham said, his voice carrying the practiced concern of a man who had spent years standing beside power. "Everyone, please remain seated." Evelyn kept one hand on the table. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, fixed on the rain slipping down the 32nd floor windows. The city below looked far away, softened by gray clouds and wet glass. Marcus noticed her breathing had changed. Short, careful, like every breath had to pass through a narrow door. "Ms. Hart," he said quietly, "can you hear me?" Graham turned toward him. "You have done enough." The words were polite. The look behind them was not. Marcus felt the old instinct rise in him, the instinct to lower his eyes, nod once, and return to the quiet work nobody remembered. He had learned that instinct in school hallways, in grocery stores, in offices where people spoke to him without ever looking directly at him. But Evelyn's hand slipped from the edge of the table. Marcus stepped forward before he could stop himself. "She needs medical help," he said. "Now." A woman from the legal team hurried around the table and pressed the emergency phone. Within minutes, the room filled with the soft rush of footsteps, the click of dress shoes, and the low murmur of people pretending not to be afraid. Marcus stood near the wall beside his cleaning cart, watching as two paramedics guided Evelyn into a chair and checked her pulse. Graham stayed close to her shoulder. Too close, Marcus thought. His hand rested lightly on the back of her chair, but his eyes kept drifting toward the shattered glass on the floor. One of the paramedics asked what she had eaten or drank that morning. Graham answered before Evelyn could. "Coffee. Water. Nothing unusual." Marcus looked down. Near the base of the table, half hidden by the shadow of a leather chair, something white clung to the marble. It was no bigger than a sugar packet. He bent slowly, pretending to reach for a paper towel. The packet was gone before his fingers touched the floor. Graham had seen it too. Marcus straightened. For a brief second, their eyes met. Graham smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Mr. Reed," he said, "perhaps you should return to your duties." Marcus nodded because there were 20 people watching, and because Noah was waiting at home with Mrs. Alvarez from downstairs. Noah would be sitting at the small kitchen table, probably drawing superheroes on the back of old grocery receipts, asking every few minutes if Dad was almost home. Marcus needed that job. He needed the health insurance. He needed the extra money from late shifts, even if it meant arriving home after Noah had fallen asleep with the lamp still on. So Marcus pushed his cart into the hallway. The wheels squeaked softly against the tile. Behind him, the conference room doors closed, sealing in the executives, the attorneys, and the questions nobody wanted to ask. He moved down the corridor past framed photographs of Evelyn Hart shaking hands with governors, mayors, and smiling business leaders. Every photo showed the same woman, sharp posture, steady gaze, a person who looked impossible to shake. Yet Marcus had just watched her hands tremble over a glass of water. At the service elevator, he stopped. The air smelled of lemon cleaner and rain carried in from someone's umbrella. He looked at his reflection in the brushed steel doors. Tired eyes, faint gray at his temples, a uniform that made people assume he knew nothing beyond mops and trash bags. Then he thought of the packet that had vanished from the floor. The elevator chimed. Marcus stepped inside, but he did not press the button. Somewhere above him, on the executive floor, Evelyn Hart was being taken away. Somewhere nearby, Graham Cole was still smiling. And Marcus knew that whatever had happened in that boardroom was not over. By the time Marcus reached the basement service level, the rain had become a steady drum against the loading dock doors. The building sounded different down there. No polished laughter. No conference calls. Just the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant rattle of freight elevators, and the soft slap of wet mop strings against tile. Marcus parked his cart beside the supply closet and opened his locker. Inside sat a faded photograph of Noah at 6 years old, missing one front tooth, and holding a cardboard rocket ship they had built from a cereal box. Marcus kept it there because some nights, when the building felt too cold and too large, he needed a reminder of why he stayed late. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Mrs. Alvarez. Noah had finished his homework and fallen asleep on the couch with the television turned low. Marcus read the message twice, then typed back that he would be home soon. He did not mention the boardroom. He did not mention Evelyn Hart's trembling hand or Graham Cole's smile. Some worries did not belong in a child's night. He pulled off his rubber gloves and washed his hands in the utility sink. The water ran cold over his knuckles. For a moment, he watched it circle the drain and tried to tell himself that he had done what he could. He had warned her. He had called for help. Whatever came next belonged to doctors, lawyers, and people who wore expensive suits. But then he remembered the way Graham had answered the paramedic before Evelyn could speak. Coffee. Water. Nothing unusual. The words had sounded too ready. Too clean. Marcus dried his hands slowly. His wife, Lena, had hated when people used that kind of language. Nothing unusual. Nothing to worry about. She used to say those were the phrases people reached for when they did not want to look closer. He could still see her at their kitchen table, years ago, wrapped in a yellow cardigan, staring at a mug of tea gone cold between her palms. She had been tired all the time then. Not normal tired. the kind that lived behind the eyes. Marcus had asked if she wanted to go back to the doctor. She had given him a small smile and said they would figure it out tomorrow. Tomorrow had become too many tomorrows. A metal door opened behind him. Marcus turned. The night's supervisor, a narrow man named Dale, stood near the break room with a clipboard tucked under one arm. "Read," Dale said. "You are needed upstairs." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "Am I in trouble?" Dale did not answer right away. He glanced toward the security camera in the corner, then lowered his voice. "Mr. Cole says you disrupted an executive meeting." Marcus gave a tired breath through his nose. "Miss Hart got sick." "That is not my department." Dale shifted his clipboard. "He wants a written statement before you leave." Marcus looked at the clock above the vending machines. It was almost 10:30. Noah would be asleep by the time he got home. The thought landed heavily in his chest. "All right," he said. He followed Dale through the basement hallway, past stacked boxes of printer paper and the smell of damp concrete. But when they reached the elevator, Marcus noticed something strange. The executive elevator was coming down, not up. The display numbers blinked one by one. 32, 29, 24. Someone from the top floor was headed straight toward them. The doors opened with a quiet chime. Graham Cole stood inside alone. His tie was loosened now. Rain-dark clouds reflected in the polished steel behind him. In one hand, he held a small white packet, the same size as the one Marcus had seen near the conference table. Graham looked at Marcus, then at Dale. "Give us a minute," he said. Dale hesitated, then stepped back. The elevator doors closed again, leaving Marcus and Graham facing each other in the narrow silver box. Graham slipped the packet into his pocket. "You have a son, do you not?" he asked softly. Marcus did not answer. The elevator began to rise. Graham's expression stayed calm, almost kind. "Then you understand how important it is to keep your job." The numbers climbed above them. 1, 2, 3. Marcus felt the walls of the elevator draw closer. "What is in that packet?" he asked. Graham smiled again. This time, Marcus saw no effort to hide what was underneath it. "A reason," Graham said, "for you to forget what you think you saw." The elevator climbed in silence, smooth and almost soundless, but Marcus could feel every floor passing beneath his feet. Graham Cole stood across from him with one hand resting in his pocket, where the small white packet had disappeared. The other hand adjusted his loosened tie as if this were an ordinary conversation between two men waiting for a meeting. Marcus kept his eyes on the glowing numbers above the door. 6, 7, 8. "I do not know what you mean," Marcus said at last. Graham gave a quiet laugh. "Yes, you do." The elevator continued upward. The polished steel walls reflected them both. Graham in his tailored suit, Marcus in a Navy maintenance uniform with a faint streak of cleaner near his sleeve. One man belonged in the building's framed photographs. The other was expected to leave no trace behind. "You saw a packet," Graham said. "You saw Miss Hart get dizzy. That does not make you an expert." Marcus looked at him. "I saw you pick something up off the floor." Graham's smile faded by a fraction. "And if you repeat that, people will ask why a cleaner was watching a private meeting in the first place." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Marcus thought of Dale waiting downstairs with the clipboard. He thought of Noah asleep beneath the old blue blanket with the stitched rockets along the edge. A single missed paycheck could turn into a late rent notice. A late rent notice could become a different apartment, a different school, another promise Marcus had to explain away. Graham seemed to read the thought on his face. "Hartwell Dynamics has excellent security," he said. "They will review the footage. They will see you entered a restricted room. They will see you interrupted a medical situation. It would be unfortunate if someone decided you created a disturbance." "I was cleaning the hallway," Marcus said. "That is what I was assigned to do." Assignments change. Graham leaned closer, his voice dropping until it was nearly swallowed by the elevator hum. "People change them." The doors opened on the 12th floor. A young assistant stepped inside, holding a tablet against her chest. She glanced at Marcus, then Graham, sensing something tight in the air, but not knowing what. Graham moved aside with a pleasant nod. "Good evening," he said. The assistant whispered a greeting and faced the doors. For the next few floors, nobody spoke. Marcus watched the reflection of the assistant's nervous hands in the steel wall. He wondered how many people in this building had noticed strange things and decided it was safer not to ask questions. The elevator reached the executive floor. The assistant stepped out quickly. Graham remained inside. He pressed the button to keep the doors open. Beyond him, the hallway stretched toward the boardroom, quiet now, its glass walls dark against the rain. "Go home, Marcus," Graham said. He used Marcus's first name as though it belonged to him. "Pick up your son. Forget the packet. Forget the glass. Tomorrow you will have a normal shift and a normal life." Marcus did not move. "And Ms. Hart?" Graham's eyes hardened. "Miss Hart has doctors. She has lawyers. She has people paid very well to worry about her." Marcus looked past him, toward the empty hallway. Somewhere behind those closed doors, a woman had nearly collapsed while everyone around her waited for someone else to speak. He remembered Lena's tired smile. He remembered every time he had wished he had pushed harder, asked more questions, refused to let polite voices make him doubt what he saw. "No," Marcus said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Graham's hand stayed on the elevator button. "No." Marcus stepped out into the hallway. "I will go home," he said. "But I am not forgetting." For the first time that night, Graham looked uncertain. Only for a second. Then the elevator doors slid shut between them, leaving Marcus alone beneath the cold white lights. At the far end of the corridor, Evelyn Hart's office door stood slightly open. A thin line of warm light spilled across the carpet. And beside the door, on a small silver tray, sat a fresh glass of water. Marcus stood still for 3 long seconds, listening to the rain whisper against the windows and the faint mechanical breath of the building after hours. The glass of water waited on the silver tray outside Evelyn Hart's office, clear and innocent beneath the warm strip of light spilling through the half-open door. He should have walked away. Graham had made that plain. Go home. Pick up your son. Keep your job. But Marcus had spent too many years learning what happened when ordinary people convinced themselves that danger was none of their business. He approached the tray slowly. The carpet softened his steps. His reflection bent across the curved surface of the silver, a tired man in a maintenance uniform standing beside something that could change everything. He did not touch the glass. Instead, he pulled a pair of fresh blue gloves from his pocket and slipped them on. The latex snapped softly around his wrists. Then he leaned closer. There it was again, not strong enough for anyone passing by to notice. A faint bitter smell beneath the clean mineral. Scent of bottled water. Like pennies left in the rain. Behind the office door, a chair shifted. Marcus froze. Evelyn's voice came from inside, low and unsteady. "Who is there?" He looked at the glass, then at the open door. "Marcus Reed, ma'am," he said. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Evelyn said, "The cleaner from the meeting." The words were not cruel, but they still made something tighten in Marcus's chest. He had a name. He had been standing 10 feet away when her life seemed to tilt. Yet she knew him only by the work he did after everyone else had gone home. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "I need you to not drink that water." The office went quiet again. Marcus heard a soft exhale, followed by the scrape of a chair across hardwood. Evelyn appeared in the doorway wearing a charcoal gray blazer over a pale blouse. Her hair, usually perfect in the company photographs, had loosened around her face. She looked smaller without the long conference table, without the attorneys and the polished walls of power. Her eyes moved from Marcus to the tray. "Graham brought that," she said. Marcus did not answer immediately. "I saw him with something earlier," he said. "I do not know what it was. But I have seen you get sick, and I do not think it is an accident." Evelyn's expression changed, not into belief, not yet, into exhaustion. "Do you understand how many people have told me I am stressed?" she asked. "Doctors. Consultants. My own board." Her voice caught for half a second, then steadied. "They say I work too much, that I do not sleep, that I need to slow down." Marcus looked at the water. "Maybe you do need rest," he said. "But that does not mean somebody cannot be taking advantage of it." Evelyn studied him carefully. The hallway lights reflected in her eyes. "Why would you risk your job for me?" Marcus thought of Noah. He thought of Lena. He thought of the elevator doors closing on Graham's smile. "Because when people are sick, they deserve someone to take them seriously," he said. Evelyn looked down. Her hand hovered near the tray, then pulled back. "Take it away," she whispered. Marcus lifted the silver tray with both hands. The glass trembled slightly, but he kept it level. Evelyn stepped aside, allowing him into the office. It was larger than his entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood shelves, and a city view blurred by rain. On the desk sat a framed photograph of Evelyn standing beside Graham at a company opening, both of them smiling beneath a ribbon of gold. Marcus noticed it, and Evelyn noticed him noticing it. He has worked with me for 12 years, she said quietly. He knows everything about this company. Marcus placed the tray on a side table far from her desk. Then he knows exactly where no one would think to look. Evelyn's face went still. On the desk, her phone lit up. The screen showed Graham Cole's name. Neither of them moved. It rang once, twice, then a third time. Evelyn looked at Marcus, and for the first time, the certainty in her eyes had begun to crack. The phone kept ringing on Evelyn Hart's desk, each vibration soft against the dark wood, each one somehow louder than the last. Graham Cole. Marcus watched her stare at the name as rain traced silver lines down the windows behind her. The office smelled faintly of leather, coffee, and the lemon cleaner lingering on his uniform. Evelyn reached for the phone, then stopped. Her hand hovered above it. If I do not answer, she said, he will know something is wrong. Marcus looked toward the hallway. Then answer like nothing is wrong. Evelyn gave him a tired, almost disbelieving look. You make that sound simple. It is not, Marcus said. But you are the CEO. You have probably had to sound calm when things were not simple before. For the first time that night, something close to a smile touched her face. It vanished quickly, but Marcus saw it. Evelyn picked up the phone and pressed accept. Graham, she said. Her voice was steady, polished, familiar. I was just about to call you. Graham's voice came through the speaker, warm and concerned. Evelyn, thank goodness. I heard you were still upstairs. How are you feeling? Marcus stood beside the side table, silent, holding the silver tray with the untouched water. Evelyn glanced at him once. Better, she said. The paramedics think it was exhaustion. That is what I told them, Graham replied. You have been carrying too much lately. There was a pause. Marcus could hear the faint sound of an elevator bell behind Graham's voice, then the muffled rush of a lobby somewhere below. I sent you some water, Graham continued. You need to hydrate. Evelyn's eyes lowered to the glass. Thank you, she said. I have it. Good. Drink it. Then go home. We can handle the merger meeting tomorrow. His tone was gentle, almost protective. That was what made Marcus's skin tighten beneath his gloves. Graham did not sound nervous. He sounded prepared. Evelyn leaned against the edge of her desk. Actually, I was thinking about reviewing the meeting notes tonight, she said. The liability section. I want to make sure we did not miss anything. The line went quiet. Not long. Barely a breath. But Marcus heard it. Evelyn heard it too. You need rest, Graham said finally. The warmth had thinned from his voice. The board will understand. I will decide what the board understands, Evelyn replied. Her words were calm, but her fingers had curled around the phone so tightly her knuckles turned pale. Marcus looked down at the water again. A tiny bead of condensation slid down the side of the glass and disappeared beneath the tray. Of course, Graham said. I will have the files sent to your office. No, Evelyn said. Bring them yourself. Another pause. This one heavier. Tonight? Graham asked. Tonight, she said. In 30 minutes. Evelyn ended the call before he could answer. The office became quiet again, except for the rain and the distant hum of the building's air system. She set the phone down slowly. He knows, she whispered. Marcus did not pretend otherwise. Maybe, he said. But now he thinks you are still following his plan. Evelyn walked to the window. Below them, headlights moved through the wet streets in long blurred ribbons. 12 years, she said. He was there when my father retired. He helped me survive the first year after I took over. He knew every fear I had about failing. Marcus stood a few feet behind her, careful not to crowd her. Sometimes the people closest to the door know how to lock it from the inside. Evelyn closed her eyes. The words seemed to settle over her like a weight. Then she turned back toward him. What do we do with the water? Marcus looked at the glass. Do not pour it out. Why? Because if someone wants you to believe it is nothing, we need proof that it is something. Evelyn nodded once. It was not the nod of a woman who felt safe. It was the nod of someone stepping into cold water because there was no other way forward. She opened a drawer and took out a small glass container with a metal lid. Marcus watched as she carefully placed the untouched water inside. Her hands shook, but she did not stop. When she finished, she looked at him. Marcus, she said, using his name clearly this time. I need you to stay. He thought of Noah asleep across town. He thought of Mrs. Alvarez checking the clock. He thought of the split in Noah's old sneaker and the promise waiting for him in the morning. Then he looked at Evelyn, standing alone in an office built for power, holding a sealed container like it was the only honest thing left in the room. "All right," he said, "but we do this carefully." Outside the office, somewhere down the dark executive hallway, an elevator chimed. The elevator chime came again, closer this time, followed by the soft roll of wheels across the carpet outside Evelyn Hart's office. Marcus moved without speaking. He lifted the silver tray from the side table and carried it behind the tall cabinet near the window, where the shadows were deepest. Evelyn watched him, her face pale but composed. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "If Graham sees the glass is gone, he will ask questions," Marcus said. He took an empty water glass from a shelf beside the coffee machine, filled it from the sink, and placed it on the tray exactly where the first one had been. It was a small thing, a simple thing, but his hands were steady now. Years of cleaning offices had taught him how to make a room look untouched, how to erase a spill without moving a paperclip, how to leave a space exactly as someone expected to find it. The office door opened before Evelyn could answer. Graham Cole entered carrying a thick leather folder under one arm. His suit jacket was buttoned again, his tie straightened, every detail restored. Only the rainwater darkening the shoulders of his coat suggested that he had rushed anywhere at all. "Evelyn," he said warmly, "you should be resting." His eyes found Marcus near the coffee machine. The warmth disappeared for one quick second. "Mr. Reed is still here?" Evelyn walked behind her desk and sat down slowly. "I asked him to stay. I spilled water earlier, and he was helping clean up." Graham looked at the tray. His gaze paused on the glass. Marcus could almost feel the silence tightening in the room. Then Graham smiled. "Of course," he said. "Always good to have someone dependable nearby." Marcus lowered his eyes, not because he was ashamed, but because Graham expected him to. Evelyn opened the folder Graham placed on her desk. The pages inside were marked with yellow tabs and neat handwritten notes. "You wanted the merger documents," he said. "I brought the latest version." Evelyn turned one page, then another. Her expression did not change, but Marcus saw the small tremor in her wrist. "The board meeting is at 9 tomorrow morning," Graham continued. "If you are not feeling well, I can speak for you. It would take pressure off." Evelyn looked up. "You have been suggesting that a lot lately." Graham's smile held. "Because I care about you, or because you think I am too tired to notice things." The room went still. Marcus stood beside the coffee machine with a damp cloth in his hand. The cloth smelled sharply of bleach. Graham placed both palms on the edge of Evelyn's desk. "You are not yourself tonight," he said softly. "You had a frightening episode. Let us not turn it into something else." Evelyn leaned back in her chair. "Then tell me something, Graham. Why did you call me 3 times after I left the boardroom?" His eyes flickered toward the phone on her desk. "I was worried." "And why did you send water?" "Because you needed it." "Did I?" Graham did not answer right away. The rain tapped against the windows, light and steady. Marcus watched Evelyn's face. She was afraid. He could see it in the way her shoulders stayed too still. But beneath the fear was something new. Attention. Graham opened the folder and slid a page toward her. "This is the transition clause," he said. "If your health affects your ability to serve, the board can appoint an interim chief executive officer. It is standard protection." Evelyn read the page. Her eyes moved slowly across the lines. Then she looked at Marcus. Only for a second. It was enough. Marcus had seen that clause before, not in a contract, but in the way Graham spoke. He was not waiting for Evelyn to recover. He was waiting for her to become too weak to fight. Graham followed her gaze and turned toward Marcus. "Mr. Reed," he said, his voice calm again. "Could you bring us fresh coffee?" Marcus looked at Evelyn. She gave the smallest nod. He pushed his cart toward the door, keeping his face blank. But as he passed Graham, he heard him say, almost too quietly to catch, "And this time, make sure you use the executive pantry." Marcus stopped for half a breath. Then he kept walking. In the hallway, the cold air met his face. Behind him, the office door clicked shut. In front of him, the executive pantry lights glowed at the end of the corridor. And on the counter inside, beside a row of clean white cups, sat a small white packet. Marcus stepped into the executive pantry and let the door ease shut behind him. The room was bright, spotless, and silent except for the low hum of a stainless steel refrigerator. White cabinets lined the walls. A row of porcelain cups sat beneath a polished coffee machine that probably cost more than his car. The small white packet rested beside the sugar bowl as if it belonged there. Marcus did not reach for it. He stood at the counter, listening. The hallway outside was quiet. The rain had softened now, tapping gently against the windows at the far end of the floor. He took out his phone and opened the camera without making a sound. His hands had begun to shake, but he held them close to his body until the image settled. He photographed the packet from where it lay, then the coffee cups, then the small silver spoon beside it. He knew enough not to touch what he did not understand. He had watched too many crime shows with Noah on Saturday afternoons, but this was not television. This was a real office, a real woman behind a closed door, and a real man who had just told him to use this pantry. Marcus turned toward the coffee machine. The water reservoir was full. Beside it sat a glass carafe, clean and empty. He opened the cabinet beneath the counter and found sealed bottles of water stacked in neat rows. He chose two, checked the caps, and placed them on a tray. Then he noticed a small black camera mounted near the ceiling. It faced the coffee station. Marcus looked at it for a long moment. If the camera was working, it might have seen whoever placed the packet there. If it was not working, someone had made sure it was not. He could not tell which possibility felt worse. His phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Alvarez appeared on the screen. Noah woke up and asked for you. I told him you were working late. He is trying to stay awake. Marcus stared at the words until they blurred. He imagined Noah curled beneath the blue blanket, rubbing his eyes, waiting for the sound of Marcus's key in the apartment door. The guilt came quickly, familiar and sharp. He should have been home hours ago. He should have been warming up leftover chicken and listening to Noah explain why Saturn had the best rings. But then Marcus remembered the look in Evelyn's eyes when she asked him to stay. Not the look of a CEO. The look of someone who had finally realized she might be alone in a room full of people. He typed back, "Tell him I love him. Tell him I will be home soon." He put the phone away and lifted the tray. Before leaving, he took one more picture of the packet. The flash did not fire. The image was dark, but clear enough. As he reached for the door, a voice came from behind him. "You take pictures of everything you clean?" Marcus turned slowly. Graham Cole stood in the pantry doorway, one hand resting against the frame. His smile was polite. His eyes were not. Marcus held the tray steady. "I was checking the inventory," he said. Graham stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The latch clicked softly. "Inventory," Graham repeated. He looked toward the counter, then back at Marcus. "You have been very busy tonight." Marcus did not move. The sealed water bottles felt cold beneath his fingers. "Miss Hart asked for coffee," he said. "Then bring her coffee," Graham replied. "And stop looking for problems that do not concern you." Marcus met his eyes. If someone is getting sick, it concerns them. Graham's smile disappeared. For a second, the pantry felt smaller than it was. The bright lights buzzed overhead. "You have a child waiting at home," Graham said quietly. "Do not let your pride make his life harder." Marcus felt fear move through him, but he did not let it reach his face. He looked at the sealed bottles on the tray. Then he looked at the white packet on the counter. "My son has taught me something," Marcus said. "When something feels wrong, you do not pretend it is fine just because an adult tells you to." Graham stared at him. Marcus opened the pantry door and stepped into the hallway. He did not run. He did not look back. But as he walked toward Evelyn's office, he heard Graham's voice behind him, low and cold. "You are making a mistake." Marcus tightened his grip on the tray. Ahead, Evelyn's office door waited beneath the warm light. And for the first time, Marcus understood that the truth was no longer hiding in the shadows. It was standing in the hallway with him. Marcus entered Evelyn Hart's office with the tray balanced carefully in both hands. The warm light inside made the room feel almost separate from the dark hallway outside, as if the city and the rain had been shut behind glass. Evelyn was still at her desk, but she had not opened the merger folder again. It lay in front of her like something dangerous. She looked up when Marcus came in, and her eyes moved immediately to the sealed bottles. "Not coffee?" she asked. "Not tonight," Marcus said. He placed the tray on the corner of her desk, far from the open documents. "These are sealed. I checked them." Evelyn studied the bottles for a moment. Then she nodded, slowly. "Thank you." Marcus did not leave. He stood near the window, watching the reflection of the office behind him. In the glass, Evelyn looked tired, smaller than the woman whose picture hung in the lobby downstairs. Her shoulders had lost their hardline. Her hands rested flat on the desk, as though she needed to remind herself that the room was real. "Graham followed me into the pantry," Marcus said. Evelyn looked up sharply. "What did he say?" "He asked why I was taking pictures." Her face tightened. Pictures of what? Marcus took out his phone. The screen glowed between them. He opened the image of the small white packet on the counter. It was not perfect, but the label was visible enough to show a logo and a line of tiny printed letters. Evelyn leaned closer. "That is not sugar," she whispered. "No," Marcus said, and he did not act like it was. Evelyn reached for the phone, then stopped before touching it. "Send that to me," she said, "and send it somewhere else too." Marcus looked at her. "Somewhere he cannot reach." She opened a drawer and pulled out a business card. It belonged to a woman named Dana Price, General Counsel for Hartwell Dynamics. "Dana has known me since law school," Evelyn said. "She does not report to Graham. She reports to the board." Marcus took the card. The paper was thick and smooth beneath his thumb. "Can you call her?" he asked. Evelyn looked at the clock. It was nearly 11. She will answer. Before she could reach for her phone, the office door opened. Graham stood there with his leather folder still tucked beneath one arm. He looked from Evelyn to Marcus, then to the sealed bottles on the tray. The room changed around him. "I thought you wanted coffee," he said. Evelyn did not look away from him. "I changed my mind." Graham stepped inside. "You are letting a maintenance worker make medical decisions for you now." Marcus felt the words land, but he kept his face still. Evelyn's gaze hardened. "He is not making decisions for me. He is noticing things you keep telling me to ignore." Graham set the folder on her desk. "Evelyn, please. You are exhausted. You are frightened. This is exactly why you need someone steady around you." "Someone steady," she repeated. "Like you." Graham's expression softened, almost sad. "Like someone who has spent 12 years protecting you." Evelyn looked at the framed photograph on her desk, the one of them standing together beneath the gold ribbon. Her fingers brushed the edge of the frame. "Did you put something in my water?" she asked. The question hung in the office, quiet and impossible to take back. Graham did not answer at first. He looked toward Marcus. "This is what happens when you listen to people who do not understand the world you live in." Marcus took one step forward. "Answer her." Graham turned his head slowly. "You are far outside your place, Mr. Reed." Evelyn rose from her chair. Her knees seemed unsteady, but her voice was clear. "His place is in this room because I asked him to stay." Graham's jaw tightened. For the first time, the careful concern left his face completely. He looked at Evelyn, then at the phone beside her hand. "You are going to call Dana," he said. It was not a question. Evelyn did not deny it. Graham gave a long breath and picked up the merger folder. "Then you should read page 47 before you do." He opened it and laid the document flat on her desk. A paragraph had been highlighted in yellow. Evelyn read it once. Then again. The color left her face. Marcus could not see the words from where he stood, but he saw the change in her eyes. Graham leaned close enough for only them to hear. "If you are declared unable to serve," he said, "the board does not need your permission to replace you." Evelyn looked at the page, then at the sealed water bottle waiting untouched beside her hand. And Marcus understood that Graham had not been trying to make her sick for one night. He had been trying to erase her from her own company. For several seconds, Evelyn did not move. The highlighted paragraph lay beneath her hand, bright yellow against the white page, cold and precise in the quiet office. Marcus watched her eyes travel over the same lines again, as if reading them a second time might change what they meant. Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist, and the city lights below looked like blurred coins scattered across black pavement. Graham stood on the other side of the desk, calm now that the truth had been placed where she could see it. "It is a standard continuity clause," he said. "Every major company has one." Evelyn lifted her eyes. "Not every company has a chief operating officer who keeps suggesting its chief executive officer is too sick to work." Graham's mouth tightened. "You have been sick, Evelyn." "Yes," she said. "I have." Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the room. "And every time I tried to push through it, you told me to rest. Every time I asked questions, you said I was overreacting. Every time I forgot something, you reminded me that I was not myself." Graham placed both hands on the desk. "Because I was worried about you." "No," Marcus said. Graham turned toward him, irritation flashing in his eyes. Marcus did not step back. "You were making sure she doubted herself." The words seemed to change the air. Evelyn looked at Marcus, then back at Graham. Her face had gone pale, but something steadier had returned to her posture. "Leave the folder," she said. Graham gave a short, humorless breath. "Evelyn, do not make this harder than it has to be." "Leave the folder," she repeated. and leave my office. For the first time, Graham looked less like the man in the framed photograph and more like a stranger standing in the wrong room. He straightened his tie. You will regret this in the morning. Evelyn reached for her phone. Maybe, but I will be awake to regret it. Graham's gaze moved to the sealed water bottles, then to Marcus. You think this man is protecting you? He asked. He does not know you. He does not understand the pressure you carry. Evelyn's fingers rested on the phone. He understood enough to notice I was in danger. Graham stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his leather folder, except for the page she had been reading, and walked toward the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. The board meeting is still at 9, he said. They will have questions. So will I, Evelyn answered. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Marcus did not realize he had been holding his breath until the sound was gone. Evelyn sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking now, openly. She pressed one palm against her chest and looked toward the rain-dark windows. I trusted him, she said. Marcus stayed near the desk, but not too close. Trusting someone does not make you foolish. Evelyn gave a small laugh that sounded close to breaking. It feels foolish. It feels that way because you are hurt, Marcus said. Not because you were wrong to believe people could be good. Her eyes lifted to his. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Evelyn picked up her phone and called Dana Price. The line rang once, twice. A woman answered, alert despite the late hour. Evelyn. Dana, Evelyn said. I need you to come to my office. Bring someone from internal security who answers to the board, not to Graham. Dana was silent for half a second. What happened? Evelyn looked at the sealed container holding the first glass of water. I think someone has been making me sick. Marcus watched the words leave her mouth. They were simple. They were terrifying. But once spoken, they could not be pushed back into silence. Dana's voice changed immediately. Do not touch anything. I am on my way. Evelyn ended the call and set the phone down. Her shoulders lowered slightly, as if asking for help had taken more strength than running the company ever had. Marcus glanced at the clock. It was after midnight. Noah would be deeply asleep now, his small lamp still glowing beside the couch. Marcus felt the pull of home again, strong enough to ache. Evelyn noticed. Your son, she said softly. Marcus nodded. He is waiting for me. You should go. He looked at the container, the documents, the office door Graham had just walked through. Not yet, he said. Evelyn studied him. Why? Marcus looked down at his worn shoes, then back at her. Because when my wife needed someone to stay, I thought there would always be more time. The room fell quiet. Evelyn did not ask for details. She only nodded, her eyes shining with a grief that recognized another person's grief. Then, from somewhere beyond the office door, the elevator chimed again. This time, it was not Graham returning. It was help coming up. The elevator doors opened at 12:14 in the morning, and Dana Price stepped into the executive hallway with a black coat over one arm and a thin silver case in the other. Two internal security officers followed behind her, both wearing plain dark jackets. Without company logos. Marcus recognized neither of them, which made him feel a little safer. Dana moved quickly, but her face stayed composed. She was in her early 50s, with close-cropped gray hair and the kind of steady eyes that made people stop talking when she entered a room. Evelyn opened her office door before Dana could knock. Come in, she said. Dana took one look at Evelyn's face, then at the sealed container on the side table, and her expression changed. Tell me everything, she said. Evelyn did not begin with the boardroom. She began with the weeks before it. The headaches that arrived after late meetings. The dizziness she blamed on missed meals. The strange exhaustion that made simple decisions feel like heavy doors. She spoke without drama, but Marcus could hear the effort it took. Every sentence seemed to pull another thread loose from the life she thought she understood. Dana listened without interrupting. When Evelyn finished, she looked at Marcus. Mr. Reed, what did you see? Marcus held his hands together in front of him. The cleaning solution had dried faintly along the lines of his skin. I saw Mr. Cole with a small white packet near the conference table, he said. I smelled something unusual in Ms. Hart's water. Then he told me to forget what I saw. Dana's eyes sharpened. Did he say that directly? Not those exact words. But he made it clear. Marcus took out his phone and showed her the photographs from the pantry. Dana studied them closely. One of the security officers stepped forward and asked Marcus to send the images to a secure address. Marcus did it carefully, watching the progress bar move across the screen. It took only a few seconds. It felt much longer. Dana turned to Evelyn. We need to preserve every item in this office. The water container, the tray, the documents, the phone records. We also need to secure the executive pantry and pull camera footage before anyone can alter it. Evelyn nodded. Do it. The security officers left at once. Their footsteps faded down the corridor. Dana remained beside the desk, flipping open her silver case and taking out a legal pad. There is one more issue, she said. Graham has access to the board calendar and the executive security system. If he realizes we are investigating him, he may try to move quickly. Evelyn looked toward the highlighted transition clause on her desk. He already has. Marcus watched her straighten in her chair. She still looked tired. Her face was pale beneath the office light. But the uncertainty that had filled the room earlier was beginning to give way to something harder. Not anger. Not yet. Resolve. The board meeting stays at 9, Evelyn said. Dana looked up. That may not be wise. It is exactly what he expects, Evelyn replied. He expects me to be weak. He expects me to be confused. Let him keep expecting it. Marcus felt a quiet shift in the room. Evelyn was no longer only trying to understand what had happened to her. She was deciding what to do next. Dana closed the legal pad. All right, she said. But you will not be alone. Evelyn glanced at Marcus. Neither will he. Marcus frowned slightly. Ma'am. Evelyn looked at Dana. Mr. Reed stays on the executive floor tomorrow morning. Not as a cleaner. As my witness. Marcus felt the words settle heavily in his chest. He thought of Noah, of the school bus arriving at 8:15, of the small apartment where every hour of work mattered. I do not know if I belong in a board meeting, he said. Evelyn's expression softened. You belonged in that room the moment you chose not to look away. Dana studied Marcus for a moment, then nodded. We will make sure you are protected. Marcus wanted to believe her. But protection was a word he had learned to treat carefully. It sounded good in offices. It sounded different when rent was due. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a voice message from Mrs. Alvarez. Marcus stepped aside and listened. Noah's sleepy voice came through the speaker, small and warm. Dad, I know you are working. I saved you a piece of my cookie. Do not forget to come home. Marcus closed his eyes. For 1 second, the office, the company, the sealed water, and the danger all fell away. There was only his son's voice. When he opened his eyes, Evelyn was watching him. Go home, she said quietly. Be with him. Come back at 8. Marcus looked at the rain fading beyond the windows. Then he nodded. He picked up his cleaning card, but before he reached the door, Dana's phone rang. She listened for only a moment. Her face went still. What is it? Evelyn asked. Dana lowered the phone slowly. Graham Cole has called an emergency meeting with 3 board members, she said. He is telling them you are medically unfit to appear in the morning. For a moment, no one spoke. The words stayed in the office like a draft slipping beneath a closed door. Graham Cole had moved before they could. He had taken the story Evelyn feared most and carried it straight to the people with the power to decide her future. Dana Price looked down at her phone, reading the message again as if there might be another meaning hidden between the lines. There was not. Which 3 board members? Evelyn asked. Her voice was calm, but Marcus could hear the strain beneath it. Dana named them quietly. 2 had worked with Evelyn's father for decades. The 3rd had joined after the company went public and cared more about quarterly numbers than anyone's health. Evelyn closed her eyes for a second. They will listen to Graham, she said. They have listened to him for years. Marcus stood beside his cleaning cart, one hand resting on the handle. The cart looked out of place in the office, with its bottles of cleaner and folded towels beside the dark wood shelves and city view. But Marcus had spent enough time in rooms like this to know that appearances could lie. A polished desk could hide fear. A perfect suit could hide a plan. Then give them something else to listen to, he said. Evelyn looked at him. Dana did too. Marcus continued carefully. You have the water. You have the pictures. You have the clause he showed you. And you have what he said tonight. Dana nodded slowly. It is not enough by itself, but it is enough to stop them from making a decision before we secure the evidence. She tapped quickly on her phone. I will request an immediate hold on any action under the transition clause. The board rules allow it when there is a credible conflict of interest. Evelyn gave a faint, tired laugh. You always did know. The rules better than anyone. That is why you hired me, Dana said. And why you should have called me sooner. Evelyn lowered her eyes. I should have. Dana's expression softened. You are calling now. The security officers returned a few minutes later. One carried a sealed evidence bag containing the white packet from the pantry. The other held a small hard drive. The camera was active, he said. We have footage from the last 48 hours. Dana took the hard drive, but did not open it yet. Any sign of Mr. Cole? He left the building 10 minutes ago, the officer replied. But his access badge was used at the executive records room shortly before that. Evelyn looked at the merger documents on her desk. He is preparing for the morning. Marcus felt his phone in his pocket, the message from Noah still waiting there. He should have been walking through his apartment door by now. He should have been carrying Noah to bed after finding him asleep on the couch. Instead, he stood in a tower of glass and steel, watching powerful people move pieces across a board he had never been invited to see. Evelyn turned toward him. Marcus, you do not have to stay. He looked at the evidence bag, then at the rain fading from the windows. I know, he said, but I will. Dana lifted her phone. I have delayed the emergency meeting until 8:30. That gives us a few hours. A few hours for what? Evelyn asked. Dana looked at the hard drive. To find out whether Graham was careful enough to hide the truth or careless enough to leave it where everyone could see. The security officer connected the drive to a small laptop on the conference table near the window. Grainy footage appeared on the screen. The executive pantry. The timestamp showed 9:47 that evening. The room was empty at first. Then Graham entered alone. He looked over his shoulder, walked to the counter, and placed the small white packet beside the sugar bowl. Evelyn stood very still as the video played. Marcus watched her face, not the screen. The truth had finally taken shape in front of her, but it did not bring relief. It brought grief. Graham had not made a mistake. He had chosen this. Dana paused the video and looked at Evelyn. This is enough to begin a formal investigation. Evelyn nodded once. Then begin it. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it held. Marcus looked at the clock. It was nearly 1 a.m. He thought of Noah's cookie waiting on a napkin in their kitchen. He thought of the promise he had made to come home soon. Evelyn seemed to read the thought on his face. Go, she said softly. Be with your son. We will need you in the morning, but he needs you tonight. Marcus hesitated. Then he nodded. As he pushed his cart toward the door, Dana called after him. Mr. Reed. He turned. Do not use the main elevators on your way down. Security will escort you. Marcus understood why without asking. In the hallway, the lights seemed colder than before. The security officer walked beside him in silence. At the service elevator, Marcus looked back once toward Evelyn's office. Through the open door, he saw her standing by the window, small against the wide black glass, holding herself upright as the company she built began to shift beneath her feet. Then the elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside. Just before they closed, his phone buzzed again. This time, the screen showed an unknown number. A single message appeared. Tell Evelyn to stop digging, or tomorrow will be worse. Marcus stared at the message until the letters seemed to lose their shape. Tell Evelyn to stop digging, or tomorrow will be worse. The service elevator moved downward, floor by floor, its soft mechanical hum filling the space between him and the security officer. Marcus did not answer. He took a screenshot, forwarded it to Dana Price, and then turned his phone face down in his palm. The officer noticed, but said nothing. When the doors opened in the basement, Marcus stepped into the smell of wet concrete and industrial soap, suddenly exhausted in a way that reached deeper than his bones. By the time he got home, it was after 2 a.m. The apartment was dark except for the small lamp beside the couch. Noah was asleep beneath the blue rocket blanket, one hand curled around a paper napkin. On it sat half a chocolate chip cookie, carefully saved. Marcus stood in the doorway for a moment, unable to move. Then he set down his keys, knelt beside the couch, and gently covered Noah's shoulder. I came home, he whispered. Noah stirred without opening his eyes. I knew you would, he murmured. Marcus sat beside him until the first gray light of morning touched the window. At 7:45, he was back at Hartwell Dynamics, wearing the same Navy uniform, carrying the same cleaning cart. But the building no longer felt the same. Security stood at the executive elevator. Dana waited near the lobby with Evelyn, who wore a simple dark suit and held a sealed folder against her chest. She looked tired, but clear-eyed. When she saw Marcus, she gave him a small nod. Dana received your message, she said. The phone number was routed through a prepaid account. We are documenting it. Marcus looked at her. Are you still going into the meeting? Yes, Evelyn said. I spent too long letting someone else tell me what I could handle. The boardroom doors opened at 8:30. Graham was already inside with 3 board members seated around the long table. He looked polished, rested, and completely certain that the morning belonged to him. But when Evelyn entered, followed by Dana, internal security, and Marcus pushing his cart just behind them, the certainty in Graham's face shifted. Not much, just enough. Evelyn took her place at the head of the table. Before anyone discusses my health, she said, we need to discuss why my chief operating officer placed an unidentified substance in the executive pantry, pressured an employee to stay silent, and attempted to use my illness to trigger a transition clause. Dana placed the evidence folder on the table. The room went silent. Security set a laptop beside it and played the pantry footage. No one spoke while Graham appeared on the screen, looking over his shoulder before placing the packet beside the sugar bowl. Graham watched the video without blinking. Then he looked at Evelyn. You do not understand what you are seeing, he said. Evelyn's hands rested on the table. They were steady. I understand enough. Graham opened his mouth again, but Dana raised one hand. The board will review the evidence with independent investigators. Until then, your access to company systems and board communications is suspended. The words landed quietly. No shouting, no dramatic gesture, just a door closing on a plan that had depended on silence. Graham looked at Marcus then, perhaps expecting fear, perhaps expecting him to look away. Marcus did not. He stood beside his cart with both hands on the handle, exactly where he had been the night before. Only now, everyone in the room knew his name. Later that morning, after the board meeting ended and the investigators began their work, Evelyn found Marcus in the hallway outside the executive pantry. The white counters had been cleared. The coffee machine was unplugged. Rain had stopped, and sunlight poured through the windows in thin gold lines. Marcus, she said. He turned. Yes, ma'am. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. You were right to speak when no one wanted to hear you. Marcus nodded once. I just did what I hoped someone would have done for my wife. Evelyn's expression softened. Then I am sorry it took danger for me to see you. Marcus looked down the hallway, where his cart waited beside the wall. Seeing people should not take danger, he said. Evelyn breathed in slowly. No, it should not. That afternoon, Marcus left early. He picked Noah up from school, and Noah ran toward him with a backpack bouncing against his shoulders. Marcus crouched and opened his arms. Noah held up a new drawing, bright with crayon colors. It showed a tall building, a little boy, and a man in a blue uniform standing beneath a yellow sun. That is you, Noah said. You are the hero. Marcus looked at the picture, then at his son's hopeful face. He smiled, not because he felt like a hero, but because he had come home. Behind them, sunlight warmed the sidewalk after the rain. And for the first time in a long while, Marcus let himself believe that kindness was not weakness. It was the strength to see the truth, speak it gently, and stay when it mattered most.